4 decades ago, Israeli and Egyptian leaders managed to end years of hostilities with the help of then U.S. President Jimmy Carter. Their experiences with the horrors of violence led them to find peace in a broken region. The deal, later known as the Camp David Accord, was officially signed in March 1979. Yasser Hakim spoke to Egypt's former Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister Mohamed Hegazi about the reaction to the historic breakthrough back then and the impact it has 40 years on.
You were a young diplomat when Camp David Accord was signed. How was the reaction in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and how was the mood behind the scenes?
I think it was not only the feeling at the premises of the Foreign Ministry, but in the streets of whole Egypt and the Arab world and the world in general. I think the event was huge and sudden and shocking to some circles. It was at the time the very strong feel of Arab nationalism prevailing, and a decision towards Israel can be a decision of war, as we all witnessed in 1973, October 1973. Israel in a war context, but in a peaceful context. In a bold initiative like this of President Sadat, I think the mood was extremely surprised.
What was the feeling watching former President Anwar Sadat arriving at Israel, watching him taking such a step after a war with the country?
I think the decision of traveling to Jerusalem at that time was beyond belief, was beyond everybody's imagination, but seeing it happen and years after, I think it was the right decision at the right moment that have changed the history of the Middle East and the course of war into this of peace and stability.
How was the mood back then in the streets of Egypt and the reaction to the Camp David agreement or Camp David Accord?
It was, I think, a divided streets, a divided public opinion, a divided cultural life, a divided political life. There were many supporters to President Sadat's decision. Israel was the enemy for many years. Changing that through a trip or through 12 days of negotiation in Camp David is a huge task, and President Sadat carried the responsibility for that. He raised a lot of eyebrows, but a lot of respect as well.
How did the Arab countries react to it, and was it worth the sacrifice with the Arab countries and the boycott by Arab countries?
The Arab leadership, particularly President Hafez al-Assad and Saddam Hussein at the time, the Arab leadership was against, and the consequences was to boycott Egypt for 10 years and the transfer of the Arab League from Cairo to Tunisia. Egypt paid the hefty price, but for peace, but it worth it. He was Nobel laureate, and he has glorified his name and the name of Egypt as a country seeking stability and peace. The Middle East is not the same, the world is not the same. President Sadat have really made a quantum leap. It was not only the return of Sinai, it is the implantation of the concept of peace into the hearts and minds of millions around the world.